Hi, Larry. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this public session meeting of January the 12th, 2022. And I would like to call the meeting to order. I would ask you to join me in the singing of our national anthem. Director, I would ask you to take a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is your roll call for January 12th, 2022 public session. Trustee Barry.
Present.
Vice Chair Cram.
Present.
Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Trustee McPherson. Trustee McPherson. Chair McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McCray.
Present.
Trustee McDonald.
Present.
Trustee Parisian.
Present.
Trustee Schooler. Trustee Schooler. Trustee Swan. Trustee Swan. Student Trustee Ali.
Present.
Student Trustee Ward.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you, Director. Before I get to 501 trustees, I'm hoping you will give me some latitude this evening because we have a timed presentation from our two doctors, Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula, at 6:40, which is in about 7 minutes. So we will continue until that time, and then I will break, briefly, and then we'll get back to our agenda. So I guess I have a motion. It's moved by Trustee Barry, seconded by Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 502 to 503, January 12th, 2022, as submitted. Please cast your ballots online.
McCray is yes.
Barry is yes.
I'm yes. I'm not quite online on board docs yet.
Chair McAllister, that motion carries.
Thank you very much. We will proceed with 601. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Hearing none. Thank you. We'll move to Director Ron for your comments.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to tell everyone how impressed I have been with the staff of the Upper Canada District School Board and the students and the parents. Moving to remote learning and then back to in-person takes an incredible amount of work, the work of our staff, work of our students, and parents who have had to do double roles at home. And the professionalism of our staff is remarkable. I had the pleasure of being invited to several classes this week to participate and see what virtual learning was like. And although we all agree that face-to-face is where we want our students and it's the best learning possible, what our staff were able to pull off in such a short amount of time and the lessons they were able to deliver were truly remarkable. And I also want to mention how impressed I am with the senior team. We were able to welcome our special education students with profound needs back starting last Wednesday and throughout the week last week, and we were able to transition to virtual school on the Wednesday last week as well, with thousands and tens of thousands of students joining virtually, and we are busy preparing to welcome them all back in person. So thank you to all of the staff, all of the parents, and all of the students. What you've been able to do yet again has been remarkable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. I note that Dr. Paul, you are online. Are you prepared to present at this time, Dr. Paul? I think you're muted, Dr. Paul.
Paul Stewart, Hi, it's Paula Stewart. I'm here as well.
Hi, Dr. Paula. How are you?
Good. I can't seem to speak through Teams, so I'm speaking through the phone.
That's no problem. Which one of you would care to begin?
So I'll start, and then Paul will explain his data, and then I'll go ahead and continue on. So if you can just let me know when the slides start and when you've moved on, that would be perfect.
Yeah, no, I'm unmuted, thank you. So I'll follow Dr. Stewart. Slides up, Paula.
Okay, so so Paul and I are really pleased to be back again. It seems like we were just here, and things have changed so much from the time we were here last. Can I have the first slide, please? The next slide, and that'll tell you what's changed. Is the slide up?
Yeah, the slides up is your slide. It's your stats.
Okay, good. So, so you can see that when we were here last, sort of mid-December, things were pretty slow in Leeds, Lanark, and Grenville, and we had just a few cases and a little bit more than what we had earlier. But then December hit us, and you can see from we pleaded with people to please not have a lot of social gatherings over Christmas, but I think some social gatherings still happen because we had a huge surge in number of new infections, sort of the 5 to 7 days after the Christmas period. So we had 776 new infections within a 4-day period. And that was the same thing that happened all across Ontario. And Paul will share his data in a second. And that really meant that we could not continue with the same approach that we had up until this point with people who had symptoms. The message was symptoms, isolate, go for testing. The assessment centers could not keep up with the number of people who are coming for testing, and the labs weren't able to keep up, which meant that instead of getting results back within a day, we are getting them back in 3 or 4 days, which is too long if it's someone who actually has COVID. So that was the change in testing that happened on December 30th, and you can see the change in with the arrow there. So that our data is not the same now as it was before the beginning of January. So now we're still reporting the number of new infections, but we're calling it sentinel surveillance, which is there are some people who are able to get the PCR test, and they are the ones, the sentinels, who across our population are giving us a sense about what's happening in the community, because they are members of our community, and they are from the higher risk settings, healthcare providers, long-term care, hospitals, retirement homes, group homes, and that sort of thing. So I'll let Paul tell you what's happened in his neck of the woods.
Sure, if you can advance the slide, please. So the next slide kind of shows you the same pattern, except the numbers are higher in our area. We're actually among the highest rates in the province as we speak today. However, again, you can see that our numbers peaked. We had almost 500 cases per day back in December, and now the cases have actually started to go down. But again, it is these are an underestimation because we're only since the date of the change, as you see here, December 31st. Since that date, we have now just testing really high-risk individuals, individuals who are long-term care, congregate settings, or who work in high-risk settings. So it is a bit of an underestimation, but we also look at other gauges, hospitalizations. We currently have 25 hospitalized patients, 6 of which are in the ICU, all of which are in because of COVID. If we were to count how many were tested positive for COVID, there would be 55. But out of those, only 25 are admitted with COVID. The others have incidentally been positive, and so I'm getting an echo here. Sorry. Okay, thanks. And so we're gauging. So we're going to be moving forward. I'll talk a bit about later, but right now, testing the number of cases is not an accurate indicator. We think it's an underestimation. So we're looking at other indicators, which will include outbreaks, hospitalization, ICU, and absenteeism at school, at work, and so on, and wastewater levels. So this is where we are now. We're hoping that this will have peaked and go down quite sharply, as we've seen in South Africa. And I just want to say as well that the vast majority of these cases are all Omicron, the Omicron variant. And most of the cases that we have are among the vaccinated, twice vaccinated. However, the hospitalizations are always skewed. The majority of the individuals who are hospitalized or who are in the ICU are unvaccinated individuals. Paula?
Yeah, so next slide, please.
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a delay here. Okay, so so the change is that we're now asking people to self-manage COVID-19 symptoms, just like they self-manage all the other respiratory symptoms that they have, that they're used to doing previous to COVID. So, and this applies to all of the people who are attending your schools, the students and the staff, that people need to assess for symptoms every day. And the province has divided the symptoms into 2 groups. So the first group is the one which are really common among COVID: fever, cough, loss of taste or smell, or shortness of breath, having trouble breathing. If you have one of those symptoms, or if you have 2 of the other symptoms that may be associated with COVID, so sore throat, headache, extreme tiredness, nasal congestion, muscle aches and pain, vomiting or diarrhea, if you have one of the first set or 2 of the second, then no testing is needed. You make an assumption that you have COVID and you isolate. And there's the website that the province has developed is very good. It walks people through the symptoms and then what they need to do next. If you do have one of those other symptoms, like a sore throat, still stay home until the symptoms are resolving, but you don't have to assume that it's COVID. So the next one, please. Just tell me when it's up and then I'll...
Yeah, it's there.
Thank you. So, so you assess for symptoms and then you isolate if you have COVID-19 symptoms. And this will apply, as I said, to everyone, the students and the staff in the school as well. So you self-isolate away from your household members as much as possible. And if you have to move about in the home, then use a medical or a procedure mask so you're protecting the other people in the home. If people are under age 12 and 12 plus who are fully vaccinated, then they just stay home for 5 days of isolation and their symptoms are improving for the next 24, or if they're vomiting and diarrhea, 48 hours. And then the next 5 days after that, wear a well-fitted mask, keep the 2 meters distance, and avoid seniors and immunocompromised. Remember before, if people had COVID symptoms, they had to stay the 10 days. The people who were vaccinated, or if they're under 12, don't have to do that. The 5 days is enough. and then just be careful for the next 5. So that's a huge improvement, and it was partly made so that students could get back to school, teachers could get back to teach, and all the other people who are working in the communities could do the same thing. So it's very much geared to be able to go to continue with life as we need to exercise it. If you're 12 or over and you're not fully vaccinated or you're immune compromised, regardless of age, then you have to do the traditional 10 days of isolation and symptoms improvement for 28 to 48 hours. You do not have to report this to public health. We will be tracking absenteeism in the schools, and we may talk about that a little bit later. So this is a huge difference for schools, and I think it's going to help to keep kids in school and teachers teaching. Can we do the next slide, please?
It's up.
Because COVID is so easily spread to household members, as well as the person with symptoms isolating, then it means that the household members must also have to isolate for the same period of time, using a medical procedure mask in the home, as I said before. So that means, so that's all. Imagine that you've got a teacher who has a child at home, or another member of the partner, or if it's a child and they've got another member of the family who's got symptoms, COVID symptoms, this will apply to them. So under age 12 or 12 plus who are fully vaccinated, once again, 5 days, the same duration as the person who has the symptoms, and same thing with the 12 plus. So this respects, you wouldn't normally do that with a rhinovirus cold, but this respects at how easily COVID can be spread within the home, that it's really important that people who could become infected, household members, are isolating for the same length of time. Once again, you don't have to report to public health or the, and so, so Paul, is that it for me? I think so.
The next one is the rapid antigen test.
Okay, so actually, one more thing on the close contacts is that workplace or social contacts, they don't have to isolate, but they do monitor for symptoms for 10 days. It's a little bit different if the testing, rapid antigen test, is being done, and Paul will go through that. But it means that, what it means is that in a school setting, we're not going to be releasing whole cohorts of grade 2 kids or grade 1 kids, because we're going to assume that if the precautions are in place, like the masking and the distancing, the hand washing, the cohorting, that it's unlikely that those students have become infected, and so they will be able to school. And that's a huge thing, I think, in terms of getting kids back again. So definitely, Paul, it's over to you now for the testing.
Thank you. So in terms of the rapid antigen testing, you've heard in the media people waiting 3 o'clock in the morning to pick up their kit. I think that was unfortunate. Basically, I just want to two things. I'll talk about availability later, but I would just want to talk about how we now have pivoted to relying more on a positive test. As I think I've said before, the rapid antigen tests, if they're positive, we believe them. If they're negative, we don't. And that's where the bottom line is. And so in the past, what we'd say, if you had a positive rapid antigen test, likely you have COVID, but we need to do the PCR test. Right now, because we have such a high positivity rate in our community, we're talking 40% in my area of positivity. If you've had a rapid antigen test that is positive, we will take it as if it's positive, as if you have COVID, and you would have to follow the slides that Dr. Paul talked about. In the context of clearing people and making sure that you don't have COVID, a one-off rapid antigen test is not enough. You need serial tests. So you need, and for the purposes of clearing somebody, for example, somebody has the rapid antigen tests and has symptoms and tests themselves once, it's not enough. They have to do 2 tests 24 to 40 hours apart at minimum that are negative to be able to reliably say that you are negative. And so we're getting individuals who have had the rapid antigen test, they picked it up at the mall, et cetera, and they test positive. They do not report it to us. They just have to stay home and inform their contacts as well moving forward. In terms of the rapid antigen test utility, Moving forward, basically, it's now prioritized because there are not that many available. We will be getting a supply apparently towards the end of the month. We are reserving the rapid antigen test for use in essential workers, return to work protocols. The isolation protocols that we talked about we're able to deviate a bit from them if we have rapid antigen tests. So, for example, if we have an essential worker who has to isolate for a given amount of period, we may, because that there's a vital or essential worker, it could be a hospital worker, long-term care worker, or it could be even an essential worker in the community, for example, wastewater, or water, drinking water, and so on. We will then use those on a regular basis to be able to allow that individual, provided that individual is vaccinated, has no symptoms, takes the precautions, and is tested daily. So we'll be reserving the rapid antigen tests for use among the essential workers for the purposes of allowing them to return to work. One of the fears that we have with the large surge of cases, which, as you know, reached almost 18,000 last week, is the fact that although Omicron seems to be less severe, if it infects a lot of people at once, many people will, first of all, a lot of people will be forced to stay home or isolate, and that will cripple essentially society at all levels. And secondarily, if it affects hospital settings and so on, the rapid antigen tests need to be reserved in that regard. And so as we use those tools moving forward, and the surge of numbers, it's also and so. Going back a bit, the surge will also give us, even if it's a small percentage that gets hospitalized, it's going to overwhelm our healthcare system. So we really need to do as much as we can to blunt this Omicron wave, and vaccinations will work, and we'll talk about them a bit later. But that's why in the interim, we have instituted more restrictions in the community to be able to decrease the contact, to give us some time to vaccinate. And that's really the bottom line, that we believe that you would like to spread out as much as possible the infections so they won't overwhelm our system, really, and paralyze society. Next slide, please. So close contacts, again, it's no change. If you're a close contact with somebody who is positive, you treat that individual as if he or she is positive. And again, you no change in isolation. Depending on your vaccination status, you stay home for 5 days or 10 days, and depending on your age. Next slide, please. So high risk management, I'll just talk very quickly. A lot of we have a protocol specifically for high risk, because what happens is individuals who work in a high risk setting, we don't want them to bring it into the high risk setting, and so there are different protocols, and we have reserved PCR testing for these contexts as well. And again, we're working with those long-term care settings, hospital settings, because they have a longer period of isolation to be more careful. But on the other hand, it is vital for us to work with them to have a return to work protocol or work isolation. Moving, please, next slide. So childcare and school response, basically, as you know, as Paula had said, you do not require to report cases, but we would like to have a sense of absenteeism in the schools, and that's more for operational reasons and giving us an idea of some of the indications of community spread and symptoms. Essentially that's what we do for the flu. If a lot of you recall, we look at percentages of absenteeism, both among school staff and among kids. We basically still have our public health nurse liaison who's working with the school. We will be able to support you. There are going to be rapid antigen tests and rapid antigen tests access to students. This is something that will be done directly through the Ministry of Education, and the use of PCR self-collection kits as well. We don't have many details on that, but they will be forthcoming. There won't be any dismissals or cohorts for COVID-19. I want to stress again that looking at our data leading up to the Christmas holidays, the vast majority of cases were transmitted outside the schools. Next slide, please. So the provincial school guidance, again, the masking, as you know, there's going to be high quality masking. N95 will be provided to teachers. Three-ply masks will be provided to students. Screening, very important. That's a hallmark of our multiple layers of protection, enhanced cohorting, pausing of high contact sports, improved ventilation, thousands of HEPA filters and so on, and vaccination, very important. I'm a bit disappointed at the rate of uptake of 5 to 11 vaccination rates. We're below 50% provincially, and so this is another layer of protection that we can offer children as well. Although again, the other layers are very important, including vaccinating teachers and everybody around them as well. And so we're going to continue working with you to enhance and foster increased uptake for vaccination in the 5 to 11-year-olds. Next slide, please. So the roadmap, really, this is really, as I said before, this is basically the restrictions that I talked to you about, which are really meant to blunt the transmission, prevent hospitalizations, and prevent overwhelming. It's going to be in place until January 26th. And then some of the measures, as you know, include limiting of social interactions internally, 5 internal, indoors, 10 outdoors, no indoor dining, closed indoor sports and recreation facilities, capacity limits, and so on. And then again, these are just meant to be a stopgap until we start vaccinating more. Next, please. So you can contact us at our health unit. I just want to underscore what Director Ron said in his opening remarks. I would like to also thank and congratulate your staff that's been working with our staff diligently, professionally, and in a very dedicated fashion to be able to work together with us. I'm not finished. There's a couple more slides that, if you don't mind putting up, which are hot off the press, and I'll share with you. But I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. And like I said, we're open. We always are in contact with Director Ferguson and his team to be able to support you as this is the next phase. This is the phase which people don't understand. I think it's the bright light shining closer to us. Although we have a bit of a dark period in the next week or two, I think that if we see what happened in South Africa, the numbers skyrocketed and went down very quickly. We do anticipate the same. We anticipate that at the other end of the wave, we're going to have vaccinated enough people. Enough people are going to be immunized and naturally immunized by infection, unfortunately, because there'll be a lot of infections, to the point where we'll have a high community protection level. And at the same time, we have medications now that are able to be given to high-risk individuals who are positive, to prevent hospitalizations. So as long as we're able to live with COVID, but manage our high-risk settings, protect our vulnerable population, protect our essential services, we're going to be living with it. It's going to be called endemic. So we're going there, which means that we'll be able to have less restrictions, which is good news, I think, for everybody. I just wanted to share with you the as we're returning to school on Monday, the highlights. I took a couple of slides from the science table that I attended last week and this week. The advisory table that, as you know, has put together reasoning and rationale of why children should return to school, and I think it's very pertinent here because we now know that school closures are associated with substantial mental health and educational attainment harms. And I have seen the data. I have seen the psychiatric data that was presented last week at the science table, and it's overwhelmingly quite distressing to see the cumulative and disproportionate effects that we've seen, particularly among marginalized groups. We also know that, again, from the point of view of safety and risk, that we have emerging evidence now that 5 to 19-year-olds appear to be at very low risk for hospitalization and severe disease compared to other age groups, and hospitalization risk is further reduced by vaccination. Hence, we want to continue our vaccination in that age group. And existing evidence really suggests that closures of in-person learning has a smaller community effect than other public health measures. And so the key message here is vaccination, ventilation, filtration, cohorting, testing, staying at home when sick, and high quality masks mitigate the risks of COVID transmission in schools. And it's important to prioritize these resources, particularly in high risk communities. And that's the bottom line. I'm just going to go a bit more deeper in the next two slides. Next slide, please. So school closures are associated with educational and social challenges. Ontario is one of the I think they're alone in Canada for sure, and perhaps worldwide, in having the longest period of school closures since last March. We know that from the international data that declines in student achievement have been associated with pandemic-related school closures and online learning, and the harms of school closures disproportionately affect racialized and marginalized communities. And in addition to that, school closures reduce the labor force participation among parents, and particularly women. And the next one, please. And again, this is what quite distressing. School closures increase social isolation, and the social isolation is what's been sort of blamed now as a major contributor to worsening children's mental health in Ontario. Either children with pre-existing mental health conditions obviously got worse, and children without pre-existing mental health conditions had increased symptoms. And so a study, and I'm talking Ontario studies, with children 6 to 18 with no pre-existing mental health issues demonstrated increased clinically significant symptoms of depression and/or anxiety, and the proportion of children with clinically significant symptoms of depression and anxiety nearly tripled during the COVID-19 pandemic to 1 in 4 for depression and 1 in 5 for anxiety. These are very important reasons why kids should go back to school. Ontario children have higher levels of screen use which have had significantly higher levels of mental health symptoms. We know that either synchronous or asynchronous learning has the same deleterious effect, and higher levels of online learning during school closures were associated with higher levels of depression and anxiety. Again, these are Ontario studies. Next slide. I think it's the last one. Oh, that's it. So these are compelling reasons why we should open schools. Schools should be the last to close and first to open, and that's what we're seeing. We're trying to protect the schools from the outside layer. We're vaccinating people around them. We're providing a community protection, a ring around the schools with the restrictions, with vaccinating third dose parents and so on, and obviously continuing to vaccinate children in school. And so with that, I will be very happy to take questions, but again, I thought it was important. This was released at 4 o'clock today. So this is fresh and new, and has and very, very pertinent to why schools should be open, and the risk of continuing to have deleterious mental health effects is quite high, and the schools are now as safe as can be with all these precautions. And I ask parents, people ask me what can parents do. I ask them to vaccinate their children. If you have any questions, call your doctor. We're less than 50%. We need to get that vaccination rate higher because collectively we'll be able to get out of this quicker. Thank you.
Dr. Paul, thank you very much. Dr. Paula, would you have anything to add as we conclude?
No, I think that's a good summary of all the things that we've been working on, and really pleased to be able to bring it to your attention.
Thank you. Would both of you have a few moments for a few questions?
Yes, for sure.
Yep. Thank you. Trustees, I open the floor to you for questions. I can't really see this, but so I'm going to lead off if I could, Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula. Obviously, we have moved to a different stage in our management of this variant. And I know, I think this offers a great deal of hope to our parents, at least to most of our parents. Would you have any other words of comfort for our families? And that's my first question. My second one, do you have any comment on this 30% threshold, which was mentioned in our press conference or teleconference with the minister this afternoon?
I did
So
not.
it's Paula, I'll
Paula,
start.
go ahead.
I think when we had really serious influenza in the community, we used to ask schools to report, if people remember this, every Friday about the absenteeism rate. And then, if it got to be above 10%, then public health nurses would contact the principal and discuss what the symptoms were and whether anything needed to be done about it. And so I think that if you have 30% absenteeism, so that's above sort of maybe you have 1 or 5% usually. If you're up there, then something's going on. And I think either the preventive measures aren't working well enough, or something needs to happen. And I think that's the point when the public health nurses who are assigned to the school would go in and have a conversation with the principal about what's happening. Is there anything else that can be done to decrease transmission within the school? Because likely if you're up that high, there's actually transmission within the school. And so we would work together on analyzing everything and seeing what else could be done.
Thank you both. Any questions from trustees?
What do you consider fully vaccinated?
What is considered fully vaccinated?
Please, yes.
Okay, right now, we still consider people with 2 doses fully vaccinated. However, I must say that 2 doses of the vaccine will not fully protect you against getting Omicron, but will protect you significantly from being hospitalized. I believe that within the next month, we will have 3-dose requirement to be fully vaccinated. We're not, we're rushing to get people vaccinated 3rd dose, because that's going to be the time where people will be considered to have a 3rd dose. And I'm going to preempt your next question. People are asking me, will we get a 4th dose? And we, as you know, we are already delivering 4th doses in long-term care facilities. And it may be possible that in the long run, we might have a 4th dose, because it may be require a booster and a booster for Omicron. And it may be that we require a yearly vaccine, depending on the situation. It's hard for me to predict, but that's where it is. Right now, you're still considered fully vaccinated for the purpose of the QR code, but I suspect that within a month and a half, it'll be a 3-dose requirement to be considered fully vaccinated for the purposes of the vaccine passport.
Thank you.
Next question.
I don't see any on the screen, John.
All right, Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula, thank you very much for giving us these monthly updates. And I think we have a standing agenda item here. We'll see you next month, if that's possible, and with better news.
Hopefully with better news, yeah. I think
Exactly.
so. I'm an optimist.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I think that's, and thank you for inviting. So I really think this is putting the management of COVID back in the hands of families. I think it's a huge thing, and really the shortened interval of being isolating and not releasing cohorts, I think is going to be huge. So I'm looking forward to it, and be glad to come back anytime you invite us.
Thank you very much to both of you. We appreciate your help.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
So, trustees, we are now going to move to item 801, which is comments from the chair. And I do have a few comments. The first is that obviously it's comforting to hear Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula speak to us about the fact that there is light at the end of the tunnel, especially with the recent announcement of in-person learning that will resume on January the 17th, and that's very welcome news. However, in the interim for the past week and a half, remote learning has been a reality, and I recognize that it has not been easy for parents and for staff and for students. I want to recognize and salute Director Ferguson, his senior team, and school principals and their staffs who have worked tirelessly during the Christmas break to coordinate and lead the complex steps involved in getting schools prepared, devices distributed, and communicating with all the stakeholders. And one example is the in-person learning for our special education students with complex needs. For the past week and a half, 103 elementary students and 41 secondary students have been attending in-person learning in our 50 schools and attended to by principals, VPs, teachers, and educational assistants. These students were supported by all of those folks, and it was a remarkable feat. Another story that I'd like to highlight has been the work of our staff and providers in the area of childcare. Emergency childcare is being offered to eligible school staff, and we now have a list of the childcare locations, which are number 11 at least within the Upper Canada District School Board. I also want to acknowledge that I was directed at the last board meeting to write 2 letters, one in support of the student trustees motion, and the second pertaining to the lawful use of stop sign cameras as outlined in Trustee McPherson's motion. And both letters are in preparation if they haven't already been sent. And finally, earlier this morning, Director Ferguson and I participated in a remote learning class. It was Mrs. Leanne Swan's learning class, grade 6 class at Linklater Public School. And I can tell you that it was fascinating. And I want to thank you, Leanne, for doing this, because you had the captive attention of your students for more than 80 minutes. And we looked at noticing and wondering techniques, unit exercise, payment methods, minds on activity, examination of credit card statements, the difference between cash, debit, and credit. And it's obvious to me that these grade 6 students have a solid understanding of financial literacy, and these students are informed buyers. And with the help of a very skilled teacher, this was a successful exercise. So thank you for that opportunity to join you this morning. We're now going to move to 901, which is the This Is Us, connecting with students, and we are featuring this evening Roxmore Public School. And Derek, I will turn this over to you.
Hi Camden, did you know I've been a student at Roxmore Public School my whole life?
Really, I'm fairly new to the school, but I am glad to be a student at Roxmore Public School. What do you think makes Roxmore so awesome?
I think the students are what makes Roxmore awesome. The students at Roxmore are very kind, and you can always count on them to make your day better. If you come with us to school with a frown, you will always leave at the end of the day with a frown upside down.
I agree. I find that the students are kind and work very hard when they are in the classroom, because teachers at Roxmore make our classroom a fun, exciting, and comfortable place to be. I know my teachers believe in me and that they care for me.
I like how the principal and teachers get to know us and chat with us in the hallways and while at recess. Miss McDonald plays soccer and football with us at recess. Miss Speck stops to talk to me in the hallway all the time and checks in to see how my day is going.
This is why Roxmore is awesome.
I'm so excited to welcome you and give you a tour of our beautiful school. Our location is in the cute town of Avonmore, next to North Stormont Place and the Roxborough Fairgrounds. We are a kindergarten to grade 6 dual track school and have recently had a 6th classroom addition, as well as a community daycare added on. It is wonderful having children from less than a year old all the way to grade 6 in our school. Our school is an important part of our community. It really is a hub, especially now that we have a daycare for the wee little ones. Students come here from close and far. Our staff are warm, caring, and committed, and absolutely love welcoming our kiddos every day. Having fun while learning is key, and understanding that each student learns differently helps us meet their needs. Our sensory room has become an important part of the day for some of our students. The equipment and tools found in here help them regulate to be able to learn better. Having a balance in our programming and focusing on outdoor education, movement education, as well as music and art rounds out the educational experience. For outdoor education, we are super lucky because we get to access the Avonmore Fairgrounds through the Roxborough Agricultural Society. Our classes can go hiking and exploring, learning more about nature, and enjoying the outdoors.
My favorite thing is probably you get to do very fun assignments, like math. I find math very fun. I find science very fun. I find French very fun, and I find English very fun. So basically, I find a lot of classes very fun. It's really, really exciting. You can make new friends. You can meet new people. The teachers are very nice, and you learn new things. You get to go outside and play. You get to make new friends. You get to meet new people. I like building a lot of stuff, and like there's a point in the year in science where the science teacher would bring in something to help you to find for you to like build. Like we play tag outside, and we do gymnastics.
Yeah, what do we do with the gymnastics?
Cartwheels and splits and stuff.
Thank you very much, Roxmore, and students and everybody. That was great. Trustee Danaher, would you care to make some comments as trustee for that area?
I would love to make a couple comments about Roxmore. Roxmore is situated in beautiful Avonmore, North Stormont, and it's a school that's going through a transition. I want to compliment Jeremy and the facilities department for a wonderful job on their renovations, which are now complete, with a wonderful daycare and 6 new classrooms added on, and the facade looks absolutely wonderful. It's a year, a different kind of a year for Roxmore Public School as they go through the consolidation with North Stormont Public School, and they're working very diligently for the students to share the experience so that when they do join together next year, it'll be a wonderful marriage. I can't say enough about the leadership of Principal Speck. She is a wonderful community person in that area and has worked with the community so hard in terms of making the school ready for the consolidation, making the school ready for all kinds of activities for the kids. It's a wonderful place. You go outside, all kinds of outdoor education opportunities out there that take advantage of that school. The kids, the students are absolutely wonderful. And also I want to mention Eric Barker, who's done a magnificent job in the amalgamation process that's going on. We're really looking forward to continuing this. And next year, the consolidation will be complete. The renovations are wonderful. The leadership is fantastic. The kids are great. And when you visit this school, you walk away with that, this is a feel-good school place. It's that kind of place. So I want to congratulate everyone at Roxmore for doing a magnificent job. It's been my pleasure to be the trustee there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Danaher. I would also echo all of those comments, and Trustee Danaher and I did have a nice tour late last spring, of Roxmore, and I look forward to the final amalgamation. Thank you so much, everyone. We're going to move now to item 1001, which is the timed item. Well, that has already occurred, so we are now going to proceed to the Operations Management Priorities and Practices Report. And Director, I'll turn this over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, you'll see from the handouts given to trustees before the meeting began that we were preparing to present on a variety of different topics, and the announcements made yesterday and today have shifted our focus a little now that we know our direction. Up until yesterday or the day before, we were planning for a variety of different scenarios, and now we know the direction we are headed for Monday, and so you'll notice some slight tweaks to the presentations from your packages, because we now understand where we're headed and have a clear focus. So up first, we do have our Superintendent Marcia McNair, who's responsible for school operations and safe schools, and I'll turn things over to her now.
Thank you, Director Ferguson, and through you, Chair. Derek, if you're able to load the slide deck for us. So thank you again to Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula for joining us this evening. Their support and guidance is instrumental in us keeping our schools safe each day, and we truly do appreciate the partnership we have with them and all of their teams. So as part of my operational update tonight, I had included 3 slides in your package. I believe a couple of the slides, both of the doctors alluded to the information, but there are just some really nice flow charts for people to follow, and we've shared these out with our principals and school administration. And April, our communications manager, April Scott Clark, has also been sharing these out on our websites, and of course sharing with our families. So yeah, Derek, if you can move to the next slide. Sorry, one more slide. So this slide is the what to do if you've been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19. So I'm not going to read through all the parts for you, because I do believe both of the doctors alluded to this earlier. So this is a really key flow chart for us. I'm learning today, when conversations with public health liaisons, that this is really important as well for community connectedness. So it has certainly an impact on schools, but it is something that is certainly shared out in the community at large. And the next slide is about the symptoms flow chart. So this would be, and I know Dr. Paula spoke about this, when there are 4 symptoms, the top 4, or then there's a group of 6 symptoms if people have 2 or more of those. And then of course it alludes to whether you've been vaccinated or not, or you're immune compromised, then what is the next steps that are expected of you. So this chart is particularly important to schools. And the advice we have recently received as early as January 10th, so just a couple of days ago, from the ministry, is that when a child, student, or staff member is advised from a case that they may have been exposed to a positive case of COVID-19 at school, they would monitor for symptoms. So there's lots of things that the word self-monitor is coming up a lot compared to when we were into self-isolate. So we will be talking lots with our schools and our families to make sure that they are monitoring their child, and by completing the provincial screening tool each day, they will be in fact doing that. So and the next slide, Derek. Lastly, just some important information that has been shared with us for how you consider whether or not you are determining you are a high-risk contact or a close contact. So public health has provided us with some very specific information, as you will see on the chart, in terms of if you've been in prolonged contact, which is defined as 15 minutes or more at once with somebody, if you've been less than 2 meters or 6 feet apart. And again, of course, even the information whether the family member works in the healthcare or not. So this is really key, and we have, like I said, provided this out to our principals. I also know that all of this information, these 3 slides, and the information that both Dr. Paul and Dr. Paula shared with us tonight are being updated as we speak into the school management toolkit. And you may recall I've shared that before with you, and I certainly will bring it forward to a future board meeting. And that toolkit becomes very valuable to all of our principals, because that will be what they reference each day, and they make sure that they're following all the public health safety measures. So the toolkit we anticipate will be shared with our principals in the next day or so. it was also great to hear tonight, and it was alluded to me in an earlier conversation, that the school public health nurses are still available to speak with our school principals as nuances or questions come up. So we really appreciate having that direct line of support. We continue to wait further information from the Ministry of Education based on their announcement earlier today, and we will share this with staff, students, and families as soon as it becomes available. So there was some more information talked about as it pertains to cohorting or testing, et cetera, in different test kits. So we will await that information and we will share it. We also continue to work really closely with public health and communicating any upcoming vaccine clinics. And we've had some recent meetings with both public health units, and they continue to work closely with us and at times use our school sites for vaccine clinics and or ask us to communicate out to our families and education staff about upcoming clinics. And we, of course, will continue to do so. So I think that concludes my portion of the operational update, Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent McNair. Trustees, do you have any questions at this point? I understand, Trustee Parizan, you have a question or two?
I do. I have two that I have received, so I'm going to ask them tonight. And Marcia, you may or may not have a response, but I'm going to go ahead and ask them.
Sure.
The first question I have is, will families be receiving additional rapid test kits through the schools?
Through you, Chair. So on the announcement this afternoon that was shared from Minister Lachey and Dr. Moore, there was information shared with us that rapid tests, rapid antigen tests are being delivered to school boards, or being shipped to school boards, and then they will be shared out with schools. So I know that that is happening as we speak as well. The specifics around what that looks like, how many tests, how often, I don't have all that information yet, but I believe that will be forthcoming with the arrival of the tests in the very near future.
That's great. Thank you, Marcia. I appreciate that. And I have one second question. Through you, Chair. What in any particular situation would staff administer a rapid test kit to a student at a school?
Through you, Chair, not to my knowledge, Trustee Parizan. In order to do anything that would be of medical nature, we would need to have consent from our parents. And I believe from my understanding of any test kits that are coming, we would be sending those home. It would be something that we would not be initiating at the school. It would be something that's a take home and parents would do at home if they chose.
Great. Thank you very much, Superintendent McNair. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Trustees, do you have any other questions?
I don't see any, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We are going to move, I guess, to the next presentation. Superintendent Perry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In-person learning began in the district for students with complex special education needs on January 6th. And I have to say that the incredible effort on the part of our principals, our vice principals, special education staff at the school to gear up and prepare for students and have them into the schools as of Thursday last week was quite incredible, and we're very, very grateful for the efforts that were made. So students whose IPRC placement is in a full-time special education classroom or whose daily programming is 100% alternative to their same grade peers were invited to attend in-person learning if there was no possible way to accommodate them remotely. Initially, 50 schools offered in-person programming to students. 212 students were invited based on the criteria that I just mentioned, and 144 students accepted the initial offer. This led to 69 teachers and 127 educational assistants being brought into the schools to support students in in-person learning. For our ECPP program, that would be what we formally referred to as Section 23. We only have 2 sites that have selected not to run in-person learning, and the students in those sites are learning remotely. All other sites have offered in-person learning. And all students with special education needs are being supported, regardless of whether they're in-person or remote learning. And that support is derived based on the organization of schedules that is done at the school level, and also through the support that's offered with the system special education department through resources, materials, consultations, participation in student success team meetings, and etc. And so for my presentation part this evening, that concludes the information that I'm bringing to you.
Trustees, do you have any questions?
I have one, Mr. Chair, John McRae.
Trustee McRae.
Thank you. Is Deanna, is that a typical ratio of students to instructors?
It would depend on each specific site, Trustee McRae. So in some situations, we have students congregated who typically are not congregated in the classroom together. So I can't give you an accurate response on that because each site is different.
Follow up. I'm reading that it's 144 students and 196 instructors. Is that, would that be an exception, or was that be if you were to look at the whole board?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the students that are being brought into in-person learning are students who have the most complex of needs. So typically students who have these types of needs would have one-to-one support with educational assistance and would have direct special education teacher time. So in some situations, we have students who are being congregated in a manner that has more staff present than they would typically be used to. Again, each site is very different based on the students who have accepted in-person learning and who are present in the school.
Thank you.
Trustee McRae raises a very interesting point in that I think the level, it highlights the level of service to our special education students with spec ed needs. This is remarkable, and this has been going on now for the past 7 days, I think, since last Tuesday or Monday. So congratulations and thank you to everyone involved. That was yeoman service. We will proceed now, I believe, to Superintendent Rudders.
Good evening, through you, Chair. So I'm pleased to be here to share an update on our recent move to remote learning last week and this week, and on our current planning for the return to in-person learning effective on Monday, January 17th. And so you're aware, of course, that the ministry delayed our return of students until the January 5th, but then subsequently announced that all schools in Ontario would move to full remote learning for that period of the 5th to the 17th. And so we were really pleased with the work of our staff and our teachers, administrators, support staff in their ability to pivot to remote learning so quickly. And we were up and running on time for January 5th. And our distance learning support team have also continued to actively support this transition to remote learning. They were offering multiple daily drop-in support sessions for anybody who wished to attend, and they were circulating key resources to our staff, and they continue to do so. And so just to recap, our students had the choice of synchronous digital learning or asynchronous digital learning. And in addition, we did offer pen and paper non-digital learning materials to students who were unable to engage in an online format. Next slide, please. At the secondary level, these materials were developed by the classroom teacher, by the subject teacher, based, of course, on the current courses that students were taking, and always with the intention and goal in mind of facilitating their continued progress to credit attainment, to attaining those credits successfully by the end of January as we approach the end of the second quadrimester. At the elementary level, we created and sent out a choice board option with a focus on enjoyable and accessible at-home learning activities in language, mathematics, and physical education. And so that was what our non-digital students at the elementary level would have received for last week and for this week. Next slide, please. So this afternoon, of course, you're aware that the Ministry of Education confirmed that all schools in Ontario are returning to in-person learning on Monday, January 17th. And so the direction we provided is that our classroom teachers will be contacting students tomorrow to determine which students intend to return to them as in-person learners and understand if there are students in the class who need or desire to continue in a remote learning option next week. We know that the closer our students are connected to and interacting with their teachers, the more successful they are. And so we really encourage the synchronous digital learning option or the asynchronous digital learning option whenever possible. However, we will, of course, provide a non-digital pen and paper learning option to those students and families who cannot access learning online. So we also recognize that our students and our families and our staff are facing significant stress and challenge right now. And of course, these circumstances are beyond their control and beyond all of our control, given the significant transmissibility of the Omicron variant. But we will continue to encourage and support in whatever ways we can. But we understand also that personal wellness is the foundation for engagement and success in teaching and learning. And so we'll continue to support from a mental health and well-being perspective as well to the greatest extent possible. So this concludes my update on our remote learning and our return to in-person learning plans at this point in time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if the trustees have any they would like to direct my way. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Rudders. Trustees, do you have any questions at this time?
I have one, Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Cram.
I'm not certain whether it's actually with Superintendent Rudders, except I don't see any other place in the presentation that I can ask the question. And that has to do with the return to school next week and subsequent weeks. We're planning for semesters in February. And I know several of principals, several of the high school principals in my area have started that sort of planning period for it. Do we have any indication whether semesters will continue in February and therefore the planning can continue? Or are we need to put on hold for a while to see if we're going to stick with quadmesters?
Through you, Chair, I can respond to the extent that I have knowledge of that. We certainly have been having that conversation as a senior team, and we've been consulting with our public health partners on that. In all honesty, I think we were waiting to have a little bit more clarity about the direction from the ministry, and so we've just received that late today. And I believe that that exact topic of quadmesters versus semesters will be something that we will be engaging again tomorrow in light of the information we have today. So no specific response yet, but it's definitely on our radar, and we recognize that it's important for us to make that decision as soon as we can. And I'll turn it over to Director Ferguson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add to what Superintendent Rudders has said, we're also been having conversations with both of our local health units. There was conversation from the ministry stating that they would look to local health units, depending on what's going on in those areas, to see whether we continue with the quadmesters or go back to a regular system. And I know I've been in meetings with chief medical officers and our coterminous boards and looking for some direction there, and they will be getting back to us as well about their recommendation around this. So more to come on this. Great question, and I know lots of people are waiting for the answer on that, and I can assure everyone we're working to get that answer as soon as we know what's the safest thing to do.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, we're going to move to the report or the update from Executive Superintendent Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to bring a update on device distribution. And as you know, because of the heavy reliance on remote learning over the course of the past couple of years, we've had a consequential reliance on technology as well. And so the board has done its best to make sure that students who need technology to support their learning while learning remotely have it. So over the course of the last couple of years, I think we distributed at our peak probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 devices that were in the hands of students. And as school got back into session, we drew those back in as much as we possibly could. And now we're back into a cycle of handing them out again. So I think it's important to recognize that over the course of the last few months, even as school was mostly in session, we did have some kids learning remotely, and we did continue to distribute technology to kids on a much smaller scale than we had previously, of course. And so that means that as it stands, we have already about 980 laptops that are still out there in the hands of our students from previous rounds who, and obviously that's supporting their learning as time goes on in this state as well. Last week, we prepared the IT department when we heard we were moving to remote learning. Jim Guerin, Tim Martin, and the team prepared 700 brand new laptops and had those in schools on Thursday, January 6th. Barely 72 hours after the announcement was that we were going remote, they had 700 laptops ready. By the end of Thursday, 381 laptops have been distributed to students, and as of Friday, I think that number was well over 600. Of course, following the same practice we have in the past, prioritizing, we say grade 12 to 7. Really, the intent here is to avoid anything that would interrupt a prospective graduate's path to graduation, and then working our way down grades as we have in the past. The next thing we started doing this week was turning our attention, the team started turning their attention to JK to 6 students. And what we wanted to do there was, instead of just sort of handing these things out, get a much better snapshot as we had in previous rounds about what families are actually saying about their technology needs. So there was a survey published on Monday, January 10th, gathering information about what JK to 6 families would need in terms of technology. And if you're concerned about the number of devices, we expect that we're doing further handouts that would occur in waves like we did in past cycles. But we have about 2,000 devices ready to go for JK to 6 students and further grade 12 to 7 needs should the need arise. I think that the other thing we wanted to point out is that we're preparing to reactivate an additional 100 internet hotspots, which would bring us to about 200 total, which was what we were using at the height of the online learning lockdown in 2021 as well. This admittedly is a little bit dated. I think this update came on Friday afternoon. And obviously the world has changed, and our initial reaction when we were looking at things today, but how do we deal with back to school? The initial reaction is, well, we're going to draw those laptops back in. But I think that right now we're going to take a breather and just see how the situation presents. It's quite possible that we could be dealing with some volatility in terms of remote learning needs, and we would anticipate that if we're flipping back and forth between remote learning on a regular basis, kids are still going to need technology. So I think we're right now in the process of regrouping, but we are poised to deliver further technology resources to students as the needs arise, and we're monitoring that as we go forward. And that represents my update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Executive Superintendent Hobbs. Trustees, do you have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Trustee Barry.
You mentioned the survey went out on Monday, January the 10th. How did that survey go out?
The same way it has in the past. So we've asked parents they can either fill it out online through an online form through email, or they can call in and signal their intent or need through a phone number.
But only people with technology would get that survey, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be the
If
case?
you don't have a computer to fill out the survey, you can still call a phone number and someone will answer the phone and take your request.
How would you get the survey?
They wouldn't need to get the survey. They would just need to get the notification somehow that there is they don't need to get the survey. They can just call the phone number. The notification went out a number of ways. So I can't say that we sent it out via mail in case they don't have a computer. So predominantly email, social media, those kinds of things. But what we're hoping is word of mouth, because obviously there's no time. The traditional method of, you might do to mail it out or to send it home with kids in a backpack, or neither one of those options are really available, right? So what we've tried to do to acknowledge people who don't have any access to technology is put the phone number in place and hope that the message, just by sheer blanketing of parents that do have technology, communication with the school, communication via social media, that the word will get to people who don't have it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can follow up to Trustee Barry's question, are principals sending this survey out to school council chairs and school councils?
I believe the survey went out centrally, so it actually goes out from an email address, a central email address we have, because the results are rolled up centrally. So it's not principals sending it out specifically. It would be going out. First of all, the largest probably distribution channel would be parents who have an email address registered with My Family Room, which represents about 17,000 people. And so I would guess that most school council chairs are represented in that group, although not as school council chairs necessarily, but as a parent.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Thank you, members of the senior team, for your top drawer efforts, and it is duly noted. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, at this point, we are going to move to, I'm trying to get my agenda back here. And we're going to move to item 1002, which is the report of the student trustees. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to student trustees Ali and Ward. You are on.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Over the past 3 weeks, Student Trustee Ward and I's activities have been centered around the redesign of the Student Senate logo, a restructuring of the Student Senate bylaws, and preparations for our first Student Senate supplementary meeting on January 14th, 2021. Firstly, Trustee Ward and I have been working on our redesign of the Student Senate logo. Upon request of this year's Student Senate, Trustee Ward and I spent some time over the winter break designing logo options to present to Student Senate. Through a prior survey, we took feedback and design updates the senators wished to see, such as an academic crest, an updated tree, and an overall more modern look. We then created 4 logo options and then put them up for a vote via email to all student senators. After the vote was complete, a consensus was achieved for one of the 4 logo designs. We are now working with the UCDSB Communications Department to finalize the logo, and we will present this logo at the next board meeting.
Secondly, Trustee Ali and I have taken on the task of restructuring the Student Senate bylaws. After review of the current Student Senate bylaws, both Trustee Ali and I deemed it necessary for revision as they appear to be quite outdated. In our restructuring of the bylaws, we will be updating the Parliamentary Code of Conduct, updating the election process and bylaws to account for 2 student trustees as well as a vice chair, as well as a few other updated elements such as attaching the new board credo. Finally, Trustee Ali and I have begun preparations for our first supplementary Student Senate meeting on January 14th, 2022. Our first supplementary Student Senate meeting will be January 14th and will take place via Microsoft Teams from 1 to 2 p.m. This meeting will be open discussion based to collaborate with the senators and receive their thoughts on online learning, equity and inclusion, and discussing the bylaw changes alongside learning more of the electoral processes for student senators within their home schools.
Over the next 2 weeks, we are looking to continue previous efforts to connect with our student senators, as well as continue to discuss pressing matters students find and face in the UCDSB. Our next report to board will be January 26, 2022. We'll gladly answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, student trustees. Trustees, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask at this time? My only comment is to congratulate you on having these supplementary student senate meetings. I think that's really important. It allows you to maintain contact with your student senators and to do some really good work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustees, we will now move to the report of the Ontario Public School Boards Association, and I would turn this over to Trustee McDonald, who is the director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Report is in the agenda. I'll go over a few highlights. The meeting did occur November 27th. We went through, as a standard process for our meetings, we always get education funding updates. Of interest, if you look at the ministry website hyperlink there, that'll take you to the BNSB memos. Often there's a lot of information that's shared with directors and school board officials about different funding initiatives that are coming through, or requirements that are supporting some of the initiatives that are in place. Grants for Student Need consultation, gathered feedback on the process, and OSPA has them, and on an ongoing basis we provide that feedback to the ministry through submission. We tend to, when OSPA provides feedback on the GSNs, typically the ministry provides a template of questions that they would like you to respond to, which will help them guide their announcements around the education funding. OSPA does not use the template. We provide an overview of how we would like funding to be delivered within the province as it relates to education. I did receive an update as well that GSN funding, or funding that was related to COVID-19 in the GSN for the second part of the year will flow through. It was announced in May, and so there was potential speculation, I guess, that maybe we wouldn't get all of the funding that was announced. Capital funding, the 23rd of November, there was also building programs announced for 78 schools and childcare spaces in the new Capital's Priorities program, which will accumulate or amount to 19,700 student spaces and 1,525 childcare spaces. There are legislative updates that are there. I won't go through them all. House really hasn't sat for some time. There is a provincial election, though, that is coming in June, which does have an impact on legislation. Typically, you will see a House rise and through the holidays, and then come back and be in session for quite some time. The way the schedule is set up, there isn't a lot of time between the House sitting before Christmas, coming back and actually getting some work done. The writ would have to be dropped, and it would would limit the number of days where work can be done by the government. So you might see some legislation rushed through, or you may see some legislation die on the table as a result of the election process. And so it may be something that that has been in place for some time, but we'll have to see after the election whether it gets put back on the table. So June 2nd is the election. May 4th is when the writ would drop, and so nothing would be put in place until then. And it's likely that that might be even backed up a little bit more, not from a writ perspective, but just from an announcement perspective. A lot of work will be done in constituency areas leading up to that writ being dropped. So you won't see much activity in the House potentially. I'm going to talk about Labour Relations Symposium here, but I also want to mention PES on the 27th or the 28th. I'm drawing a blank on the dates of January. PES will be held this year again virtually. In previous years, we would meet and have a number of sessions for trustees to attend. This year's session is virtual, and OPSPA has decided that they would have one registration fee for boards, so that all trustees could attend, and we wouldn't have to worry about paying a registration fee per individual. It's based on the board. The Labor Relations Symposium is tentatively or scheduled for April 28th, 29th. We'll wait and see what that entails as far as it's in person or virtual, but they're also looking to gather speakers for that session as well. There has been a lot of activity since our board of directors meeting. I won't go into it in here because it really didn't pertain to the board of directors, but you see the activity of OPSPA in social media. OPSPA is very active on Twitter, and we did send out some information that was, I guess, used to help shape some discussions across the province about some calls to action or some measures that we were looking for before school, before students were returned to school. And so some of those things were addressed, not all, but that is, that's a process that OPSPA is putting in place to be more visible in social media, be more connected to mainstream medias. One of the criticisms in the past was that OPSPA was not the voice, and oftentimes whenever there was a question to be asked about public education. And so I think that's shifting, and certainly as things are progressing with announcements related to COVID, as announcements are related to funding, any of those types of things, OPSPA is certainly being front and center and responding, but also being part of the media response as well. So I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see the progression. Not always do we agree with each message that's sent out, but I think it's important that we are being as visible as we are, and certainly representing boards in Ontario that educate so many students in the English public system. So I'll leave my report at that, Mr. Chair. There are a number of pieces in the report. I'll let you peruse that at your leisure, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Trustees, do you have any questions of Trustee McDonald? I don't have a question, but I have a comment, Trustee McDonald, and I'm alluding to the latter part of your comments. Our president, Kathy Abraham, has been a very active, vocal, visible, authoritative voice of in education matters on behalf of trustees, and I would ask that you share that with the board of directors at your next meeting. So we thank her very much for that.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, I will do that, and she has, and you're absolutely right. And I will share that a lot of that information that's there, Kathy is able to articulate and bring the message forward. But a lot of support from our staff at OPSPA with the thin staff. Our ED and our communications people are always constantly addressing a lot of issues that are happening behind the scenes, and making sure that Kathy has the relevant information so that she can be prepared whenever she is responding, and certainly giving the information to the media. So Kathy's done a great job to be able to pull the information from our staff, but certainly staff have done a great job to make sure that we're front and center.
Yeah, you're so right. So thank you. Yeah. You're going to move to 1004. 2022-2023 board memberships. I have a motion moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee McRae. Would you be okay seconding that?
Yeah, sure.
that the Upper Canada District School Board renew the 2022-2023 memberships for the Ontario Public School Boards Association. I'm opening the floor to any discussion.
Mr. Chair, maybe if I may just give a little bit of information.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Not to carry this beyond what it might need, but just for trustees' information, OPSPA does provide a lot of professional development support, a lot of resources for trustees to be able to use to be able to perform our duties as trustees and elected officials in Ontario. They are advocates for English public education in Ontario. Those are the benefits associated to being a member, but that goes beyond that. There's a lot of key work that is done behind the scenes and doesn't necessarily get the limelight sometimes. But our staff are always constantly, and when I say staff, many of the people at OPSPA are on contract, and so they are performing a single or double or triple task specific to the contract that they're on. But they're responsive to accessibility, they're responsive to copyright, responsive to legislative, responsive to policy and finance issues across the province. And sometimes we're pulling in those resources from other boards. But that information is shared with chairs, with directors, and with a lot of individuals within the boards to be able to help us do our job much better. There is a key work document. If you go to the OPSPA page, it describes in more detail and probably more eloquently than I can what the key work that OPSPA does. I will add, though, the additional pieces that come into play with that is OPSPA has a consortium that also supports representing English public boards at an energy review, so dealing with rates when it comes to energy. OPSPA also is the lead for English public boards when it comes to labor relations and negotiations at the provincial table, and so they set they are the primary voice and primary advocate when it comes to our labor relations discussions, which is moved to a kind of a two-tiered, and I don't mean that in a negative way, a provincial and a local level conversation and agreement in place. So OPSPA leads that process for us. So a lot of benefit, a lot of work, and again, emphasizing the PD that's provided to us. When we attend sessions, there are high quality and excellent representatives that are there speaking and providing us with solid information for us to come back in our communities and represent our boards.
Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Student trustees, Ali and Ward, would you have any comments on the OSTA piece?
Through you, Chair, to the board. So for Trustee Ali and I, OSTA is arguably, aside from the board itself, our greatest resource of guidance in terms of seeking advice, because aside from just talking to each other, Trustee Ali and I, the only way for us to communicate with other student trustees and with others in the same position as us would be through OSTA and communicating to other student trustees. And for example, the motion that we passed last board meeting on December 15th for Trustee Ali and I and future student trustees to be able to second and move motions, that came directly from OSTA. So OSTA does remain our greatest resource of guidance as student trustees, and it has been a huge honor and a huge privilege to be a part of OSTA.
In addition to student trustee Ward's comments, I would like to add that OSTA is the biggest student advocacy group in Ontario, and its advocacy extends to the students of the UCDSB, including collecting testimonials that we present to them through our meetings and conferences. So it's definitely one of the most useful tools, as it allows us to make every single moment of our 1 year span, which is a very short one that we can represent all the students in the UCDSB and help extend those efforts forward on a provincial level.
Thank you very much, student trustees. We appreciate your comments. If there are no further comments, I'm going to move to 10:05. Is that okay with everybody?
Excuse me, Chair McAllister, we need to do that vote for those two memberships.
Yes. Thank you very much, Lisa. So, folks, I will ask you to cast your ballot. And I'm off. I'm in favor. I seem to have lost 4 docs, but I'm in favor.
Thank you, Chair.
McRae in favor.
Chair McAllister, that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We are now going to move to 10:05, which is the Director's Red Apple Award. Would you please enlighten us, Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, it's my pleasure to share with trustees tonight that I'm announcing a new Director's Award. As trustees will be aware, Director David K. Thomas had an extra mile award that he gave out to staff members that went above and beyond in the call of duty. Former Director Stephen Sliwa had the Award of Merit that gave out to people who did exemplary service in their job. So this evening, as a new director, we have a new award, and it is called the Red Apple Award. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, but the criteria for being awarded this is that their Red Apple Award is given by the Director of Education to individuals that stand out for their deeply rooted dedication to our school board's top priority, which of course is our students. Their day-to-day impact on those around them branches far and wide, planting seeds of inspiration for us all. The award is going to actually be a physical apple made of glass, actually made locally in the Upper Canada District School Board inside our district by Grey Art Glass out of Merrickville in the heart of the Upper Canada School Board. So locally sourced from a local artisan with all biodegradable materials, and they will have that award that they can keep with them. Obviously, given the situation that we're in right now, we will not be drawing these initial winners together, but we're very hopeful that in the next round of winners in June that we'll be able to bring everyone together and celebrate. But I am able this evening to notify the Board of Trustees about who our initial winners are of the Director's Red Apple Award. So first up, we have a teacher from R. Tate McKenzie Public School in Almont, Jane Vaninga. Miss Vaninga, I had the pleasure of working with her briefly 18 years ago. She was only a few more years under her belt in teaching than I had, but she was far ahead of me in her pedagogical expertise and experience. I learned a tremendous amount from her, and I know other teachers have over the years. She's absolutely dedicated to ensuring that all students can read. She's unwilling to accept the idea that there's students that can't learn how to read. Remember many times her saying when people might have suggested that that was nonsense, and that yes, they were going to be able to read, and use assistive technology to make sure that that happened, and spent a great deal of time as well mentoring and coaching her colleagues, myself included, and raising all of us up. And she absolutely meets the spirit of this award, has dedicated her entire professional career and her life to students and to her colleagues, and has made everybody around her better. So congratulations to Mrs. Vaninga from R. Tate in Almont. Next up, we have Debbie Banks. Debbie Banks, well known throughout our district. She's currently the principal of special education, but before that was a teacher with us, and has also been a vice principal and principal at elementary and secondary level. She's winning this award for her work in with the Power Up program. Ms. Banks is the architect of that program, and as trustees are fully aware, the Power Up program was designed to increase inclusion in our district. We had students that are part of this program that before the program began were not able to attend school. Some were attending school on partial days. Others were being suspended regularly or excluded. After this program was created and launched, and Principal Banks worked with principals and teachers and educational assistants to get this up and going. We saw those students were now able to join us and to remain in school. You know, the work that this has and the legacy that this is going to be for Principal Banks will spread out for years into the future as we continue to grow this program and students can benefit from it. Trustees will remember that one of the parents of a child in this program who was asked about the experience commented that it was as if the Upper Canada District School Board had rolled out the red carpet for her child. And Principal Banks has been rolling out the red carpet for students and her colleagues for many years, and we all owe her a tremendous debt of gratitude, and very pleased to congratulate her on being the winner of the Red Apple Award. Our final recipient for this round is Erin Herford. Erin Herford is currently the president of CUPE, representing all of our CUPE employees, our support staff throughout the district. Ms. Herford is winning this award for two main reasons. The first being that during a pandemic, when you look at collective agreements that were never written with a pandemic in mind and didn't account for it, there's obviously going to be some friction points. And Ms. Herford was certainly a vocal advocate and passionate advocate for the CUPE employees and did everything she could to make sure that they were being well supported through this. In addition to that, every conversation we had, particularly at the beginning of this pandemic and trying to transition to it, each time Ms. Herford also talked about what was best for students and found ways to collaborate with us, to sign letters of agreement, to find flex in the collective agreement so that our schools could be as safe as possible and that CUPE employees continue to be able to work and to provide supports for students in a variety of ways. It was a pleasure at the time. I was superintendent of HR, so got to see firsthand. And you know, Ms. Herford continues to work with Superintendent Brownlee to try to ensure that our schools remain open and safe and clean during this pandemic time. The other reason that she's winning this will sound like an exaggeration, but I can assure you it's not. Ms. Herford, on 2 occasions in the last 2 years, remarkably got involved in situations and went far above and beyond anything that would be reasonably asked of someone in her position to assist 2 different staff members. And I can tell you, again, without exaggeration, that without her intervention in these medical emergencies, it's very likely that those 2 employees might not be with us today. So very heroic effort on her part. And so for her efforts to do what's best for CUPE employees, for our students, and for the efforts that she did in those 2 particular situations, she is our 3rd and final recipient of the Red Apple Award for this round. So thank you, trustees, and please join me in congratulating our inaugural 3 recipients of the Red Apple Award. There will be, as I mentioned, the awards that we give to them, and also at the board office in the foyer, we plan to take one of the walls there and have a tree. We're going to get a local artisan woodworker to create a tree in the front. The chair of the board suggested it should be made out of apple wood, and I think that makes quite a bit of sense. And we're going to hang wooden apples with the recipient's name on there. And as we continue to issue this award and that grows, you'll see that tree fill full of apples. And we'll have no difficulty whatsoever in finding other recipients who go above and beyond and who keep as their top priority our students. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this opportunity to bring this to everyone. And once again, congratulations to our recipients.
Well, thank you, Director, and congratulations to Debbie and to Jane and to Erin. We value your participation and your service, your outstanding service to this board in so many ways, unspoken. And we thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing your apple on the tree and looking forward to the next round. So thank you very much. I believe we are at the conclusion of our meeting. And it's moved by Trustee Dana Hurst, seconded by Trustee Patty Ziang, at the regular meeting in public session of the Upper Canada District School Board, January 12, 2022, be adjourned at 8:12. And the next regular meeting will take place on January the 26th. Trustees, I wish you all a good evening and a safe week or two ahead. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night, all.